Kia ora, and thanks for joining us. Well, what a roller coaster week it's been. From the depths of despair at the possibility of Amendment 583, which we've all become very familiar with now, becoming part of legislation with just days' notice, the implications of which were absolutely huge. From that point to the heights of seeing and hearing the announcement by Erica Stanford on the steps of Parliament, alongside Cynthia Hancock's and other representatives of our home educating community, that the amendment was to be dismissed. Fully, not even back to the committee stage, but completely dropped. Incredible. Well, we've all played our part, and I know for myself, here in my little quiet study, silently typing words that I desperately hoped would be heard by MPs, to the jubilation of shouting aloud for joy at the computer screen when I saw the announcement, despite the fact that I knew nobody would hear. Ironic. Anyway, I think it's been the way for most of us, really. Each of us in our homes doing what we could, all whilst passionately facilitating our children's learning in a myriad of ways. Gosh, we're an eclectic and diverse bunch, aren't we? But boy, did we unite and got the result we wanted, got the result we needed. Now, there may only be 6,500 of us, 6,500 homeschooling families in New Zealand in a nation of 5 million. And yet, barely an MP hasn't heard of our cause in a positive light now. And also the media, I think, for that matter. You know, we had so much airtime, even on budget week. And I think anyone who has followed the story will now know what a mighty force NCHENS is, even if they don't remember exactly what it stands for. I heard one person saying, interviewing Cynthia, and they were saying the National Council for Home Education. And I thought, well, it's close, but actually it's educators. And there's good reason for that, because we're not simply a movement, an organization, we're individuals. We're homes and families, and we are parents who choose to educate our children. And NCHENS supports those individual families, parents, children, and teens. That's you. And so we wanted to return to our panel space and just say an enormous thank you to you, as well as reflect a bit on this week that was. Well, it's been a long week in politics, hey? But enough of this long-winded introduction. I hope that I have somehow been able to articulate some of what I think we've all felt this week. And today we're here to unpack a bit of what actually happened, where we are now, and where we're heading next. But first, let's introduce the panel for today. And well, really, I don't think there's any need for introduction, but welcome along to our highly esteemed and fantastic advocate, Cynthia Hancock. And for any here who don't know who you are yet, could you please give us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Sheena, for that rather grand introduction. I have been a veteran home educator. I home educated my own 5 children. I've been in the homeschooling space for about 30 years now. And since my youngest graduated 10, 11 years ago, I have been coming alongside families, helping them get started with homeschooling, understanding the application form. And then I came on board the National Council of Home Educators as part of the government liaison team and have been advocating for home educators ever since. And obviously, that is a background that came in rather handy in the past week.
Absolutely. You've rolled on this journey for a very long time, Cynthia, and we're so grateful to have you on our team. Welcome along to the lovely Crystal Watts, who I know is still on quite a high from meeting with the Education Minister. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you, Sheena. Thank you for having me. So, for those that don't know me, I've been homeschooling now for 17 years or thereabouts. I have 8 children. 2 have flown or grown and flown, so no longer at home, and we homeschooled right through. I have 6 still at home, and we are currently homeschooling 2 teens, 3 in primary school, and 1 in intermediate, 2 in primary school, and I have a preschool as well. So I'm currently doing right across the board. But also I have a business, Engaging Minds. So I've been in the homeschool space helping families I've been doing that the last 10 years. And then even before that, I was doing admin for national Facebook pages. So yeah, I've kind of been doing a few whack lately.
You have indeed. And again, really grateful for your amazing experience in this homeschool space. So it's good to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Also, I'm delighted to welcome along Hayley Smeaton, who was also part of the key delegation at Parliament there. So welcome, Hayley.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Not the role I expected on the day, but one
Yeah.
was very privileged to be a part of. So, no, it was great. So, yes, I am in the Manawatu. We have lived here for the last 11 years. So before that, we started homeschooling in Dunedin. We have 7 children. My oldest is finished now. He's moved on to further training and work. And still have the other 6 with me in our homeschool. So I've just got my last exemption. My little girl's not 6 until August, but I thought I would get it out of the way quickly. So knocked that out at the beginning of the year.
Wonderful. That's fantastic to have you with us and all of your experience that you bring from the Manawatu. Next is one of Homeschool's wonderful social media specialists, and I'm sure viewers and listeners will recognise your name from there as Nee Law. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you. I've been homeschooling for 24 years. I have 3 adult children who have grown and flown. I have an 18-year-old who graduated with his GED at the end of last year, and I'm just down to my last teenager who is 15. And yeah, aside from that, Aucklanders might know me as the executive member of one of the executive members of the HASCA committee, and we represent some Aucklanders, and the HASCA Hub coordinator.
Another very busy home educator.
Yes,
Aren't we
very
all?
busy.
If you need a job doing, ask a busy person. And if you can't find one of them, find a homeschooler because they're all guaranteed to be really, really busy. Well, I better introduce myself. I'm Sheena Harris and I live in Hamilton in the Waikato. I do hail from Bonnie, Scotland, and I've called New Zealand home for the past 19 years. I am wife to Nathan, and we have 3 boys who are wonderful, and I've homeschooled them all pretty much all the way through for the past 16 years. 2 of them have now graduated, but still enjoy coming to the Harris Hotel for their dinners and whatnot. So they still live at home, but our eldest is now graduated from University of Waikato with discretionary entrance to get in, and he's now working full-time as a graphic designer. Our second son worked for a couple of years in the dairy industry and is now setting himself up in his own business with rearing stock. And our youngest is now 16. And so I'm in my final year of homeschooling with him because he has set his sights on a mechanical engineering course. So once I thought the day would never come, and now I can't believe it's here so soon, finishing the home educating journey as a homeschool mum. Anyway, introductions over. It's time to get going. Cynthia, this roller coaster ride that we found ourselves strapped onto very unexpectedly, how did it happen?
Well, Monday last week, so 10-ish days ago, another home educator spotted a press release that was all about Amendment Paper 583, and that was about the Teaching Council and different aspects of what they were doing there. And tucked right at the bottom of the press release was a line that effectively said, "Oh, and in other proposals, we're going to bring in the ability to make regulations around home education, etc." That was it. That's all it said. I was like, wait a minute, what is happening here? So I had to go deep diving to find what that amendment paper said, and that most people would be aware by now that said that they could make regulations around reporting, assessment, and anything else that they saw fit. So that was the beginning. The following day, the regulatory impact statement was released, and that fleshed out a bit more of what was going on in the background. I recognised certain parts of it and where they had come from, even though they weren't, that wasn't clearly stated in the RIS. And that began, okay, now what? What do we do? First, we tell everybody, and then we need a plan, right? And that plan was write to MPs, put information together. For my part, I was writing to MPs, but I was writing targeted documents as well to ministers and to certain parties, putting things in terms that hopefully they could connect with. And I also had contact with Lawrence Unan from the Green Party, who brought on board Ginny Anderson from the Labour Party. So they were giving me some background information and insight. Media quickly got on board once we started making noise. And I think I've done about 12 or so interviews in the last week and a half, give or take. And and so it grew from there, really, didn't it? And then somebody said we should go to Parliament. So some wonderful ladies organised in 24 or 48 hours a rally at Parliament. So it was a lot.
It was a very lot, wasn't it? And there were a lot of people that we will mention again in a little bit. There were a lot of people in the backspace doing a lot of work to make that happen. And Cynthia, you were the one up front for us, and you were our voice, and you were the fingers on the keyboard. Boy, did you write a lot of words last week, and we are enormously grateful for that and for your just your wisdom and your leadership. So I just want to honour you for that, Cynthia. Thank you. And acknowledge that was the driving force that helped all the rest of us, funnel in behind you. So once we got to, let's just kind of, we got into the big day. D-Day came, and it happened to be the day that we'd decided Wednesday was the day we would go to Parliament and have our rally. We didn't know whether it was going to be that afternoon or Thursday or even later when this amendment paper was going to come up in Parliament. But it just so happens that was the day that things were shifted. So what was the result? What happened, Cynthia?
Well, perhaps if we do the bit in between first, as to sort of what was really happening that day. So there's a lot of steps and processes in Parliament, but a bill goes through various stages of reading and discussion in what they call the Committee of the Whole House and so on. So at the point that we found out about this, the point at which this amendment was introduced, it had already gone through its first and second reading, it had gone through its select committee process, so that means it's passed public consultation, and it was still sitting in the Committee of the Whole House stage. Now, thanks to the actions of some of the opposition parties and lots of questions and proposed amendments and so on, it got slowed down in that phase, in that first week, which did give us a little extra time to kind of get our end rolling and for people to write to MPs and so on and so forth. When it came to Tuesday night, I was informed that the Committee of the Whole House stage had ended on the bill, which meant that it was now able to move to its third reading stage. And if it had completed its third reading stage, it would then have been just awaiting for royal assent to become legislation. So when we went on Wednesday, we were thinking, well, is it going to be third reading today? Is it not? And I was messaged in the morning by Ginny Anderson telling me it is on the order paper. This is before it was made public. It's on the order paper for the third reading today. I was like, okay, here we go. And then later she called me and said, they've just taken it off the order paper, which means something's happening somewhere in the background. So it was a bit of a roller coaster, even just driving to Parliament. And I was getting messages from various MPs, where are you? When are you getting here? We're going to come out and see you. So I knew that Lawrence, I knew that Ginny, and I knew that Laura were going to come and see us. But I was thinking, when I prepared and went for the day, we're going to have this picnic on the lawn. They're going to see us. Those guys will probably come out and see us. And that's kind of all I was really expecting at that point. But shortly after we had seen those three, an advance party came out from New Zealand First to check on a couple of things. I thought, okay, this is getting interesting. I sat down and ate half a sandwich, and I saw David Seymour approaching. So he came to speak to us. And while he was speaking to us, my phone started ringing, and the lovely Hayley answered it for me and then said, it's the minister on the phone. And she said, would you come into the Beehive and meet with me? Certainly. And so I grabbed Haley and Crystal because they turned around and they were right there. And I was like, those two are perfect. And so they kindly agreed to accompany me into the beehive, and my husband as well. We went through security, etc., and met with the Minister and the Secretary of Education in a conference room. So that was the beginning of us finding out what was happening.
Right into the hub, right into the minister's office. I mean, that must have been quite an incredible feeling.
Well,
And
yes,
she actually told us, she actually told us right at the beginning of the meeting, look, we're going to drop these amendments. At that point, I wanted to open the window and just quickly yell it to everyone down on the lawn. But we did have to stay in the meeting probably for another 40 minutes or so before we went down. So still worthwhile, but it was a long wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you do a happy dance? I mean, did you all link hands? And you were all very professional, absolutely. But I can imagine that was going on inside.
Yes. Yes.
It was for me.
Yes.
Yes.
Me in particular had to keep a very calm, yes, Minister, we understand. Erica Stanford was sharing with us sort of, the background. She said some of this publicly, what she was thinking, the advice she'd received, her concerns about, child safety really weigh heavily on her, and so on, but recognising that there were complexities she hadn't considered, and that therefore she was going to withdraw these amendments entirely and consider reintroducing them in subsequent legislation with proper consultation. And then we went on to have a slightly broader discussion. I was able to put across some points about how valuable it would have been if we had had earlier discussions, because I could have filled her in on some of the background information around some of these things. And we talked about just the breadth and scope of home education and what it was like when ERO reviews were more routine in the past, and the fact that we were open to some reasonable, proportionate additional accountability, but it must be done in a way that's applicable to across a broad range of home education philosophies and approaches, and obviously with proper consultation. And I did suggest that it's possible to do that within existing legislation. We'll come back to that, I think, in a minute, because I've just noted something in the Hansard report from Wednesday that may apply to that. Yes, it was good. And then the minister asked if she could come down and announce it to the wider group that was gathered, which we, of course, agreed that she could. And so we accompanied her down, and she told everybody, to much clapping and cheering.
Yeah. Actually, so that was where that moment of sort of released tension could happen, when the crowd received it. And so what was the atmosphere in the crowd, those of you that were there? I know you were there, Haley and Crystal. Can you tell us a bit about what that picnic down on the Parliament lawn was like?
Yeah, it was fun. I don't know who came up with the name Bringing Your Learning to Parliament, but I thought it was very aptly named. Because it's what we do as homeschoolers, isn't it? We bring our learning places. So in a sense, when you tell your kids, we're going to take our schoolwork somewhere else today, they just went with it because that's what we do. No, it was fun. In such a short amount of time to have so many people there, I think kind of estimates were around 350 people. And again, a very diverse range of families and activities on offer. There were people doing art, some sketching the beehive. Some had bought just a mini unit on the New Zealand government to learn about in front of the Parliament buildings. And some children were up trees and climbing monuments. So, we're homeschoolers, aren't we? We free range our children. Full disclosure, probably one or two of them may have been mine. But it was a great feeling there. And I know some people, it was way outside their comfort zone even to go to something like this, but they just felt it is so important. There was one lovely old gentleman who had come down from the Horowhenua. He had a daughter in Invercargill homeschooling, and he had come to represent her and her family. There was a couple there with a brand new baby, their first child, and they want to be able to homeschool him. And so he was at his first government rally at just a couple of months old. So, a really wide range of people. Hugely appreciated the people that were willing to drop everything and travel. I know we had people there from Taranaki, Wairarapa, Tararua and Lower Hawke's Bay, Kapiti, Horowhenua, probably 80 or 90 people came down from the Manawatu. So yeah, it's great to see just so many people willing to put the face of homeschooling on for the public, even the public that were walking through the Parliament grounds, but for all the MPs who started coming in almost as soon as we arrived, and were very willing to come around and talk to everyone and see what everyone was doing. So it was really positive.
Fantastic. Thanks for describing that. You know, when we were watching it from a distance from here, we were just in the back room, you know, still sending messages and trying to keep, you know, communications going. And at the same time, just sort of hearing little snippets of updates from you down there of what it was like. But it's really great to hear some of these stories, and really quite moving actually to realise that there was people there who haven't even started homeschooling yet. And yet they're looking towards that and wanted to you know, be part of the movement for change. So that's just wonderful. So Crystal, what would you like to share with us of some of your highlights from Wednesday?
It was a whirlwind of emotion and work and organisation, but it was just so incredible to see families come together. And I'm so thankful for everybody, like Hayley said, who just dropped everything and came, because they understood how important it was to have our voices heard. The day was so joyous, even though there was such this massive thing hanging over our heads. The picnic blankets and there were bubble machines, there were balloons, and there were kids playing soccer, kids up trees, like Hayley said, but then there were kids sitting down doing their schoolwork with their parents. And
Beautiful.
It was so beautiful to see. And you could also see families catching up that hadn't seen each other in a while. I saw someone I hadn't seen in 20 years, which was just an added bonus for the day. So it was fun. And then I got to talk to MPs, which I never thought I would be in a position to do. And that was wonderful. It was a privilege to stand beside Cynthia and support her in doing some of that. And then, taking the MPs around. Some of them were really interested to actually physically talk to the families that were there as well and learn more and see what they were doing. And that was very encouraging to see.
It was part of the whole point, wasn't it, for them to see that we are just regular people doing something really cool with our kids. My husband also remarked on, you know, the fact that we left the place completely tidy. You know, we respected the place that is part of our nation's capital and our nation's history, which is great too. You know, and I think we left quite an impression on the MPs in general, both from the sheer volume of emails they got from us all. They'll be recovering from that for a while.
And I think some of us are now bombing them with thank you emails.
Yes.
So that's
they do appreciate that, though. It's good to say thank you. As one, I think it's David Seymour said to a few people, we get asked to do stuff, but we hardly ever hear a thank you. So I think it's valuable to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So Nina, how did you first hear about the announcement? Were you on social media when you first got wind of it?
I actually was, yes. I spend a lot of time online and on the computer because I work on the computer a lot of the time. So I'm often tuned in regardless, but I think it was Cynthia had messaged us and told us what was happening. And from there, I don't really know what happened. It just seemed to all snowball. And next thing I know, it was get the word out. And I thought, well, I can't go down to Wellington. I can't do much else, but I can sit here and I can type. So that's what I did.
Amazing. Yeah, fantastic. You were a big part of helping that movement to get the word out there through the socials. So,
I think it was a team effort though, because there was a lot of talk going on behind the scenes of what to say and what we needed to get, what message we needed to get across. And so I can be a keyboard warrior, and if that's all I can do, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. So on that, I know we want to say some thank yous. Crystal, do you want to go into some of that for us?
I want to say a specific thank you to the team on the ground that organised the rally. I was part of that team as a sort of an interns representative and connection. And I just specifically want to say a massive thank you to Anna Webster, Katie James, Christy Ralston and Musita. as they were the core team that organised the rally in such a short space of time. And that team worked their tails off to get that done. So that's including setting up the Facebook event and all the press releases. And there's one other person that doesn't want to be named, but she knows who she is. And I want to say a massive thank you to her as well. So there was a lot of background support. There were press releases. There were things typed up to put the event together, the code of conduct for behaviour on Parliament lawn, and all the people that got involved in getting things ready, the bubble machines, and even like things like rubbish bags. Yeah, so thank you. We couldn't have done it. It was such a team effort. And then for everybody on social media who then invited other people to that Facebook event and took the word out, spread the word, we couldn't have done it. Everybody played a role, either big or small. Massive team effort.
Yeah, we were very
Fantastic.
conscious, those of us who were there, very conscious that there were so many people who would have loved to have been there, but with time constraints and travel, some people I know had children who would just find that kind of environment too overwhelming. But we definitely felt the support of the homeschooling New Zealand community all around us the whole day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for acknowledging those. And I certainly felt that distant thing. It was just going to be too difficult to get down there from Hamilton. But yeah, it was just cheering you all on. And it was such a fantastic movement. Yeah, and thanks as well to all of those who sort of shared templates earlier in the
Yes.
piece when we were trying to get words together. And for some, that's their gift and they're really good at it. And for others, they just kind of, give me something to go on and then I can make it my own. So it's a thanks to those who shared templates, gave encouragements on how to write to MPs early in the piece as well. And for keeping going, I think that momentum, we maintained that momentum, particularly through Monday, Tuesday after the weekend. We came back with it real fast, real hard. And I think that was really part of what helped the noise, the sort of general out there and all over social media, through media outlets, as Cynthia was doing interviews. That was so helpful to just maintain that momentum to get through. So
Yes.
that was
We
was really
absolutely
helpful.
couldn't have done it without all the families and all the people who wrote letters to the MPs. You
100%.
know, and even the people who copied and pasted the lists of emails into under my posts and so on to make it easier for people. Everybody contributed in some way, and every single one of you, we just have great thanks towards, because we couldn't have done it if we hadn't all pulled together and all done our part, whether that was a big or small part.
We had local people that went to Erica's office and took personal letters to her, their children and the parents, and there were so many of them that the single group that was going to go had to split into 3 separate groups because it would have been too much at once. So each group, I think, had around 6 to 8 children and their parents. And 3 different groups went and dropped off letters from the children to Erica.
Beautiful.
So it was,
Amazing.
that was just one initiative that one of our parents organised. It was brilliant.
And
Absolutely.
because that was in the constituency for Erica Stanford, so that was just
Yes.
really significant. And
It
we thank
was,
you to
yeah.
those families for doing
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, that's how we gained the victory, I think. I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff, obviously, in the big picture, but really that was the key. I think just that being unified and just, being together despite our diversity, despite all the different philosophies we may have and our different approaches to homeschooling, by coming together and recognizing we just needed to get on the same page, keep the same thing, the main thing, and which is homeschooling our children in whatever way we would like to do that freedom to homeschool. We had that hashtag free to homeschool NZ going around, was just so, I think, so significant in all of that victory, really, and getting the turnaround. So looking a little bit forward from this point, just, I know a lot of people are thinking, okay, so now there's this talk of consultation with the Ministry of Education happening. And what does that look like, Cynthia? What could that mean?
So as a starting point, We have a meeting with the Ministry of Education at the end of next week, scheduled at this point, and that will be Sheena and I and a team of 4 others to represent the home education community. So, in fact, you're looking at 3 of that team. The 4th one is Izzy, who is Start Craving Dad. So, we'll be meeting online with the ministry with a team leader at the Ministry in Wellington and a couple of others to just start the discussion of, what do we want to see happen? What are they thinking? Just a starting point. We also have just scheduled today a meeting for Sheena and I and another person with the Secretary of Education and the Deputy Secretary of Education, which will happen in early July. And we will move forward then with just talking through what does consultation look like with them, because we can represent the home education community in those discussions, but I think there also needs to be provision for the wider community to give feedback, whether that's feedback that comes to us and we present, or whether that is something, once the proposal is sort of organised, is put out for sort of direct consultation. Again, we don't know exactly how that will unfold, but I think that the minister will be very aware of the need for proper consultation, and that doesn't mean just talking to 2 or 3 or 4 people. It means providing opportunity for the community. So that will be an important part of it, and we will work it out as we go along. I think it's important to realise that nothing is going to change overnight, right? Even if the minister is still talking about possible future legislation, and in the Hansard report from Wednesday, it does say that they're drafting a new piece of legislation, just begun on it, but those processes take quite a lot of time. So we don't expect that anything, even if there is something put into legislation, would happen before the election. It would probably take them a year to do. And the other thing to remember about that too is that even the measures that she's been talking about, particularly increased ERO reviews, etc., that is only going to happen as a result of budgetary allowance for increased reviews in next year's budget. There is nothing in this year's budget to increase ERO reviews. So we're talking about a minimum of 12 months away before anything becomes a thing, if you like. So we have time as a community to think about what will that mean for us and what should we do. And I know we're going to discuss that a little bit more. But I just want to reassure everyone, nothing is going to change dramatically and instantaneously.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think there's been a lot of that sort of unsettling that's been going on for possibly some months even. And then it's kind of gone kaboom. And it takes time, I think, for everyone to just settle down and accept that, like you say, nothing's going to change at the moment. But it may be that there will be some changes come in, but we're going to get the opportunity to have a proper conversation about that. And I think this last week has, like you said, a lot of the MPs were really impressed with what they saw on the Parliament grounds there with the homeschool families and with the communication that we've sent with letters from children and, families, parents writing in. So I think all of that has possibly even just changed a little bit of the atmosphere in New Zealand. I certainly hope so, to see homeschooling in a really more positive light, generally speaking. I think that could be really useful going forward.
Absolutely. And I think even, when we think about what is it that the minister was trying to bring in, if you read the regulatory impact statement and in talking to the minister herself, her key concerns are really around the fact that we get exemptions at 5 or 6, it goes right on through to 16, and without routine ERO reviews, there's no checkup, there's no touch point. And so she was talking about possibly doing something around what she called transition points. So as a child enters intermediate, as a child enters high school, wanting some kind of update perhaps from families on, this is where we're at now, this is our next plans, our next steps, our resources, etc., just to see that we are still doing something that looks like teaching our children as regularly and well as. And if that ends up being the type of thing that they are looking for, that is not too extremely burdensome. I mean, certainly it's an extra thing for us to do, but it's not, terrible. Our real concern with that legislation wasn't so much the idea of some sort of reporting, as long as it's not over the top. It was the open-ended nature of it could be absolutely anything, and not just with this government, with future governments. So I think that home educators do need to understand that it's not unreasonable for us to have some degree of accountability. And existing legislation already has that. They've always had the power to do error reviews. It's just the fact that they've chosen not to, and that's for budgetary reasons. And I've pointed out that to the minister. I pointed it out to her before the elections when she was asking questions about accountability and so on. I said, well, we've got error reviews in the law. And she's made it pretty clear in our conversations with her this week that there will never be enough error reviews to give enough accountability because of the cost. So the point of some kind of check-in, some kind of reporting, whatever that is to give them a bit of an idea of how are the broader community doing. And then to pick up on the ones where there's some indication that there might be a concern and to refer those ones to error. So they were talking about increasing error reviews to 200 from after next year's budget, from July next year onwards, there or thereabouts. That was when they were going to start sort of enforcing the idea of whatever measures they were going to introduce. And of course, that can all shift now that they're doing consultation and now they're looking at future legislation. And there'll be an election in between, and they might change the whole landscape anyway. So, we don't need to get too worked up, but we need to think about. And I think this is a conversation we've been having for a while in the home education sector. We have a responsibility to ensure our children are taught at least as regularly and well as. And even from the time we wrote our exemption, there was an expectation that there would be some way in which we individually monitor our children's progress, reflect upon their learning, keep samples, write things down, whatever that looks like for each individual family. We've always known that we could have an error review. Now, because it's a small number, we've always said to families, don't tie yourself up in knots and make everything about being ready for an error review, because we don't want to take away from your teaching of your children and your interaction and life with your children. But at the same time, we need to be sensible about the fact that we do need to do something so that if we have an error review or if we need to do some form of reporting, that's less difficult, less stressful, and we're more able to be successful with that. So, but it doesn't have to be over the top at all. And we talked in a previous video that we did together about some ideas around that. I'm sure we'll talk about some more. But we're not. I'm cautiously optimistic, or pretty optimistic, that what will come will not be too overly burdensome.
Yeah, sure. And so I know there's already been a little bit of talk out there on social media about ideas for record keeping and where to get resources and all of those sorts of things. I just want to give a little shout out for a record keeping document that NCHENS have got. So if you're a member of NCHENS, it's free to join, even if you are waiting still for your exemption or you already are home educating, it's free to join up. And on the members area there, you will find a document under the resources section on record keeping. So that was a little project I was involved in just over a year ago. And so there's some ideas, suggestions, and just some help for you there. And I know there's other things being shared around out there. And I think there'll be some more about that so that we can equip and support and help our homeschooling families with what it might look like to do some of that record keeping stuff. And it's not daunting, it's not that difficult, but we can do something. And it's intentional. And I think it's that intentionality as educators that is a really good practice to have anyway, isn't it? To reflect and to just notice where we've come from, where are we at now, and where are we going to next? That's all. So that's something that we can all do. Is there anything else anyone wants to share before we finish up this conversation?
I just wanted to add in just to help people understand why I don't think it's going to become too burdensome. If you think about the numbers and the logistics, and I always do this, I look at data, stats, math, etc. Right. So there are around about 1,000 students, but over 1,000 students who are currently 10 years old. And there's a bit over 1,000 students who are currently 13 years old, right? And in fact, if you look at most of the year levels, they average out at about 1,000 students in each age group. If the ministry says, okay, 10-year-olds and 13-year-olds, we want an update from, right? They've got 1,000 reports from each group, so 2,000 reports to process. And if you do the math on that, let's say it takes them, and I'm probably being generously optimistic in the way that they do things in their capacity, but let's say it takes them an hour to process each of those reports, to look it over, make some notes, think about things. In some cases, perhaps ask families for a little bit more information, similar to as they do for exemption applications. Enter it into their system, file it, do their whole thing. Let's say it's an hour average. That means they basically need 2 full-time staff to do absolutely nothing else but read the reports just from those 2 cohorts of students. So, of course, they're the government. They can throw money at absolutely anything they want, but we are in a time of tightening fiscal matters. And obviously different governments, different parties in power like to throw more or less money around. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that any government introducing something is always looking at what's our value for money? What do we get out of this? And that's the exact question that Erica Stanford was asking a while back in terms of the allowance they pay us. What do we get out of it? Right? How do we know outcomes, etc.? So they want something coming back at them. They want some information in some fashion, and I'll be putting to them different ways they can get that information without making us do the work. But also they want contact with families in some form that gives them assurance. And at the end of the day, a minister is always about, this is my responsibility. What do I have that shows everything's okay? Right? And they don't need tons, but they need something so they can say, we have that information. We have that accountability, that knowledge, that whatever. So again, this speaks to why I don't think it's going to become overly burdensome, because for it to be overly burdensome for us requires enormous resourcing on their side.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, Cynthia. I think that is a really helpful sort of picture of your perspective, seeing it from both sides. And I think that's something that's helpful for us as home educators actually to understand and see it from the ministry's perspective as well. Not sympathetically in any way, but just factually, just matter of fact. This is how it is. This is how we are. And, this has to meet in the middle somehow anyway. That's the reality we're facing. So that's a really useful explanation. Crystal, did you want to bring something else for us?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of add to what Cynthia said, that I think we can all agree as home educators, it's different to write an exemption for a 5-year-old than it is for a 10-year-old, than it is for a 13, 14-year-old. There's different content because of their age. So I don't see it as unreasonable to have these touch points at transition. And I was talking to my mates at Patricia from Free to Homeschool in Queensland, and I want just a quick shout out to her to say thank you, because she was a big part in the consultation and helping the core team here, because Queensland have gone through this 2 years ago and also succeeded. But they do what is called a learning plan. And so we have other people that we could reach out to that are already doing this and have the resources available that we can borrow, we can tweak for New Zealand. The work has actually already been done, and it is working over in Queensland, and it can work over here as well. And they were as short as 2-page documents. These are not big things at all. It's just writing a paragraph on how your child is doing in math, what they've been doing for the year, and what the plan is going forward. So I just want to reassure everybody that it's not necessarily going to be another exemption. It's not going to be this massive big thing, and it doesn't need to be. Queensland even got 1-page learning things ticked off by their government. So please don't panic, everybody.
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
Anyone else got anything they want to share before we finish off in a moment or two?
I think it's just important that we also acknowledge that a lot of New Zealand families, by nature, we are very private and we don't like anyone involved in our families. So this is a big deal to a lot of people. And even though it seems small to those of us that keep records and do things naturally, or and that are involved widely across the homeschooling community, that for some, the thought of sharing anything about their family beyond their family, firstly the exemption was a big deal, and now to have to share something. So I think we do need to acknowledge that there are families who will find this daunting, no matter how small it is. But we also need to be there to support those families to find a way to do this, whatever this is, but to just find a way to support them through it and help them through it, because for some of them, it's going to be very confronting to share anything about their families. They're just, we're private. We want to just do our own thing. And, you know, we're home educators. We want to just do our own thing. So I get that. Yeah. And I think a lot of families have sort of communicated that to me that, oh, I don't, you know, but that's my family. So, yeah, it's going to be a support thing that they need as well.
Definitely.
I think that I was just going to say this conversation has been a long time in coming. I think whether we would like to be able to homeschool and do what we want to do without interference or not, we have known that this is this is on its way. And so I guess now we are at that stage where we can't sit back and do nothing. We have to work with the ministry over this. So just grateful now that we've got the opportunity to do that, and with some very wise people who are happy to run numbers and tell the government what they can afford and not.
Yeah. And I just think just supporting the families, we've got such a wonderful group of people that, you know, for those that find this hard.
Yeah, once we have more information, I know a number of the local groups will be putting on parent evenings and information evenings to be able to get this across and to support our families.
Yeah. 100%, yes.
Even the ministry and there is made allowance for the fact there may need to be support to help families understand what's being required of them, and, you know, upskill if necessary to do it or whatever. Right? They've acknowledged that already. So it's not like they're going to go, okay, we want this from you and it starts next week and do it or else, right? That's not the approach, not the vibe that's coming across at all. And obviously if that was, we'd have a few words to say about it. We're pretty good with words, it turns out. Yes, and I totally hear what you're saying, Nina. It is daunting for families often to share things, and as always, as I've always done in the exemption applications, I would encourage families not to share personal information, even though any information about your family can feel very personal. I totally acknowledge that. But we would be encouraging people to keep it to the basics. My child is here, we've finished that, we're now doing this, here's our next steps, you know. Simple, to the point, and hopefully more than enough.
And just letting them know that they're not on their own, that there's a whole team to help them.
Yes. Yeah, and we'll all be grappling with it. You know, even though I'm no longer homeschooling, I'll be getting my head around what is it that this looks like, and what do families need to do. So I can provide guidance. There'll be many others within the homeschooling community doing the same thing, even if it's no longer something that directly affects us. We still have the experience and the space to go, well, this would be reasonable or unreasonable. Here's some ideas on what you can do, and so on and so forth. You know, we definitely don't ever want people to feel like they're just left out on their own with no.
And it can actually be quite fun. I mean, I would have always found it quite fun taking photo of my kids and writing what they've been up to, you know.
And I try and tell parents that though the application form for the exemption is overwhelming, it's actually a really, really useful process to go through to get your head around what you're doing and what your intentions are.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And the intention with this is to do much the same thing, but on a smaller scale. Sit back and go, how are we doing? What are we doing? Where are we going? Do we need to tweak? And it's also all of these things, as someone with growing kids and now grandkids, I actually delight in what records I did keep over the years, because my kids ask questions about it, and I like to look back every now and then and say, oh yes, once upon a time I did write the odd reflection on how we were doing and where we were going and who was doing what. And I think it is, we can look at it from, we can look at it too. I mean, whatever comes is extra work we have to do, but we can choose to look at it with a positive attitude too. We can choose to look at it and go, well, actually, I'm going to write this in a way that feels good for me and it meets the ministry's requirements, sure, but it gives me something to look back on and stick in my kids' folder or portfolio or a little box of memories or whatever. And hopefully we can all find a way of doing it so that it benefits not just making the ministry happy, but it benefits ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think it gives us confidence too, because when you look back at what you might be in that moment thinking, I'm not doing enough, what am I doing? But you look back at what you've done and you think, wow, actually, I've done a lot. I'm okay.
Yeah.
It can actually also be a confidence boost to send something to
Yes.
the ministry or to even have an error review and have them say, you know what, doing great. We're happy, right? That's a confidence boost as well. And every now and then over the years, I get a homeschooler going, I wish there was some way of getting reviewed because I'd like to know that I'm doing okay. Some people feel a bit of outside, validation is helpful to them. Not
Yeah.
everyone, obviously. We acknowledge that.
No,
But
yeah.
yeah, we can take the positives out of it and roll with it.
Agreed.
And of course, if they're requiring more from us, it's a perfect opening to say, well, how about that allowance?
Back to that one.
Yes, actually, I noted as the minister made her announcement at Parliament, a family was very, very quick just to get a question in there as well about homeschool sports. So she's been alerted to that, and it sounds like that's going to be on a future agenda as well.
Yes,
No, I really
absolutely.
hope so.
Yes.
She was quite shocked to find out what was happening. She was unaware, as far as I saw, she was unaware of the problem and was quite shocked to hear. So good on that family that stepped up.
Yes, and she knows the allowance is an issue. She's been made aware of it, and she'll fully expect us to raise it again in future discussions. So we will.
I think that was one of the biggest positive things I got out of the meeting personally, Cynthia, is to see that she saw and Ellen saw that the relationship had broken down and there was that need to rebuild that relationship. And I personally really saw that from them. And I was like, yes, this is what we want out of all of this, is just to rebuild that relationship and those networks so the ministry will work with us.
Yes.
And then we can advocate and we can get what suits our homeschool families.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's definitely feeling like a new day, isn't it? And we've covered such a lot of ground just even in this panel time, and we've definitely covered a lot of ground over the last 10 days. So nothing has changed, and yet somehow it feels like everything has changed. That's the sense I have. So it's a new day, and there are plenty of homeschool veterans all over the country who just are passionate and love supporting newbies, those that have been on the track for a little while, and those who are further down the track. And still, we all have still been figuring it out every step of the way. I still feel like I'm figuring it out, and I'm nearly finished. But that doesn't mean I'm going to be disappearing. Like Cynthia, I'll still be around because I'm just really passionate to help and support other homeschooling parents, and there are lots of us to do so. So it was just really good to connect today. And hopefully you are feeling encouraged and inspired still. And, as we celebrate this victory of the U-turn by the Minister of Education here in New Zealand, we're really encouraged going forward that actually there's some really good atmosphere and some good positives going forward for our homeschooling community. So we're going to finish off there now. Thank you all so much for joining us. And I'm sure this is not going to be the last of our video podcasts. So watch this space and we'll certainly be keeping you updated. Check out nchens.org.nz. Check out all of our socials and, of course, the other socials that are around in the homeschooling space for New Zealand. There's plenty of spaces to connect. Don't forget about your local homeschool groups as well. Connect with them. And if you're still looking for one or you need some help with that, then do get in touch with NCHENS. We'd love to help you. We'll say ka kite for now, and thanks so much. Bye.
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 Bye.